Yes.
Okay. So we've got our special guest, Ms. Kazz Maynard from what's the name of the town?
Wallaroo.
Wallaroo in the York Peninsula, and her amazing historical work called Terra Incognita by Design, i.e. Van Diemen's Land, and tying it into many of the Shakespearean mythology, so to speak, if you want to call it that, which it seems to be some kind of puzzle. And she's got an amazing set of arguments and a lot of information over the coming weeks. So here we go. Kaz, do you want to take it away? We'll start talking about it.
Well, thanks, Glenn. Well, I just, I don't even know how I started on Tasmania at the moment. It's just one of those, you go down the rabbit hole and it goes wherever it lands, I suppose. So I've just put a little bit of a presentation together so other people can follow along down the rabbit hole, I guess.
Right. So what's the central argument? Do you want to start with something? Is there central argument that you want to start with?
Well, I think that they were here a lot longer than what they are saying they are. It sort of makes sense with the old buildings that are getting pulled down in less than 50 years, and these are like substantial buildings, castles, etc. It just seems bizarre that a castle would need to be pulled down after 50 years.
Okay, so we've got all these old buildings and castles in Tasmania, otherwise known as Van Diemen's Land. The mainstream narrative is that it was more or less discovered by Van Diemen's in the 1600s, but no one settled there. No European settled there till about 1803, 1804. And then there was perhaps more effort around 1822. That's the general narrative. But what we're saying here is that sure, there was a Dutch boat here and there, but it was actually there was actually possibly a lot of activity that's going all the way through from the 1600s and perhaps from the 1500s, and we see potential references of this Eden, this land beyond, that's hidden land, that's designed to be hidden, and we see references of that, and that's most likely in the Shakespearean works and other works of that era being the very end of the 1500s and around the year 1600. There seems to be substantial references to a hidden land that generally points towards Tasmania being the most likely choice of that, whereas other researchers that have researched Shakespearean code, for example, or Francis Bacon code, have come up with ideas that there's a hidden land, there's a hidden place. It's most likely Oak Island or Newfoundland or something like that, and really that's a ruse. It's just it's a first tier ruse to something far more important, which is a land on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, it's just mind-blowing, really, some of the things that it's in plain sight. Once you start investigating, as we'll see when we go through it, it just everything sort of comes back to it. So we'll see anyways.
Let's do a few slides for today. We're going to make this every week. Is that all right? Because there's so much to cover, right? There's so much, and it's so involved. So if you can show us a few of the slides, we'll talk through them. And if you can give us one curious nugget as a takeaway.
All right. So, we'll just go through the first known navigations of Australia. Like they talk about Van Diemen's Land not being, like you said, not being discovered until the 1600s when Abel Tasman went through there.
Yeah.
But, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that they were here a long time. I feel anyways. So we'll just go through, and talk about some, the censorship and stuff, how they deliberately modified these maps and things.
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory on this, and it's also with cartographic propaganda, how they,
No, so that's a good point. Let's start with this, okay? So, cartographic propaganda, who came up with that term?
It was just in Google. I just Googled it, and there was all this stuff about it. So it's actually a thing. It's not something I just made up.
Okay. Because because a lot of people look at ancient maps and they say, "Oh, this is proof that there was big land masses," and cartography is sometimes obsessively accurate. Like Lieutenant Cook went to great pains to get it spot on because he was obviously going to be peer reviewed for generations.
That's
And
right.
and so they're pedantic beyond belief. And then in other times they're a bit rough because of it's late medieval period, and but sometimes they're just this is what people don't know. This is just flat out wrong, and it's done by design.
Oh yes, totally. Yeah, so they're saying sometimes they lie, but they call it a distorted model.
Mm.
And it's a persuasive cardiography. So, so it leaves a lot to, you've got from here to here and in between, maybe the truth. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, well, what I've found is after looking at some of these big, long lines of, I mean, this one's been printed in 1607. So there you go. It's been a while since they've been through here, and they've got, is that trees or villages? I'm not too sure. Hills. So they know that they've been around here because it's already mapped. They've got names. But if we look on, it's the same thing, this big land mass that goes right across, joins up to all the rest of the world. But if we look at it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, now that is extremely interesting.
Yeah. So I think that they have just distorted the map and put the top of it onto the rest of Australia, the top of Tasmania, that is, onto the, Terra Incognita.
Wow.
So I found that pretty, I went, oh, that's a bit. So I just, was looking and I was thinking, oh, what's all these weird things? They've got all these animals. So I started looking. We've got a goat and we've got Goat Hills in Tasmania. And we have a chimera. We also have chimera in Tasmania as well.
So what's the map on the left?
Well, I'm not too sure whose it is. I think it was another one from Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, because they had the chimera in it, and they were saying that it was ridiculous. It was a make-believe map and all of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, well, maybe they're telling us, well, telling themselves in code places, because, we've got also, Mount Pegasus and the Elephant Rock. And as you can see, this coastline, if we flip this upside down, it's pretty much...
Yeah, it looks spot on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So they've got all this. So all these old maps, and some of them mythological, and you'll show us about even the Peter Pan illustrations. Things
Yes,
that are meant to be fictional have been either referring to Tasmania, or another argument could be that Tasmania, because it was obviously the hardest penal colony in the world, or something,
yes,
and it was one of the worst places, most likely that they had to suppress or send so many people of certain how could I say, old world people. They sent all, whether they were Jewish or whether they were Buccaneer, or whether they were, an older sect of Christianity, or just free thinking people, whatever, or pirates even, or whatever. They
yes,
put them there, and then they named the places as a testament to their mythology, their legacy. And there's a tie-in together. Either they're referring to Tasmania in the 1600s, because that's the last real true hidden Eden on the planet,
yes,
or once they do invade it in the 1800s and they take up the leftovers from all the Buccaneers that's been hiding there for the past 200 plus years, they then, in a tongue-in-cheek testament, keep retaining Hebraic, Jewish, Greek mythology, even other mythologies, many mythologies. They put them all together as sort of
yeah,
creating a remnant island, um, of folklore, and you get an abnormally large amount of folklore based, or biblical based, or Greek, pantheon based names that are so abnormally extreme. Like, if you think that in the United States, in South, from Florida upwards, in the southeast, it's basically Neo-Egyptian names. Everything's Memphis, everything's like that. But that's not as extreme as Tasmania. Tasmania is almost every second place name is out of some kind of fairy tale.
yeah. I mean, you can see like here on Mount Pegasus, we've got Mount Orion and Cyrus. I mean, you know.
So yeah, that's right. Sirius or Cyrus?
Oh, it's serious. I was thinking. Oh, I can't even see because I haven't got my glasses on. Excuse me. Yeah, it's serious.
And we know Sirius is one of the constellations, and it's part of
Yes,
mythology as well. And Pegasus is the same.
yes,
And these all tie into astrotheology, because there is constellation based all mythology is drawn from constellations, and for whatever reason you might think that is. And so we have this marrying up of constellation of the constellations and mythology, which it always has been. We know astrotheology and mythology are tied. We also can you'll probably explain in other videos, maybe not today. You might
yes,
talk about how Tasmania somehow does it. There's aspects of what you can see in southern Australia, that when you look up in the sky, it's different to the north, and that there is some kind of thing that we can only see certain things in the south, and so some of the mythologies from Greece might actually have no relevance to the northern hemisphere people, and might really be only southern hemisphere people where those myths and legends actually apply.
yes.
Right. Well, that's good. That's excellent. Let's go to another slide.
So here again, I've just picked another random one out that had like, you know, I mean, where else would you see a chimera? I mean, I presume this was a possum. I couldn't really tell. I had a look around for monkey, but I did find Possum Creek. So, and that was up near the coastline. So again, it could be a coincidence, but really, come on. When you've got so many of them,
Well,
because
you've only shown us a few. You've got basically like a couple hundred or something. So
well, all different ones. So look at some of the names. Just a few while we're here. Like we've got Bigfoot. I mean, some of the things they're really funny. They have some, we've got the walls of Jerusalem, but once you go in closer, it doesn't show you too much on here. But we have Solomon's Throne, Mount Jerusalem. We've got Lake Thor even, It just goes on and on and on. Some of the names are a bit amusing, but sometimes it doesn't always show up all of the names. So like Solomon's Dome, Doghead Hill.
And Doghead, all these have significance which will go through, like the dog heads. Dog's head.
And there is even, where is it down here somewhere? Skullbone Plains. It sounds like a lovely place to go camp.
Right.
There's a campsite around there. Lake Augusta. It just, once you really start looking, there is some great things I've found. Oh, there he is, Skullbone Plains. Somewhere you want to take your wife, I guess.
Right, and there's constellations, so you've got to show how there's the points between various key locations in Tasmania make pentagrams and make the Star of David or things like that, right?
Yes. Geo-cosmology. Yes, we'll get into a bit of that. Explain to you what it is and show you examples and how they pertain to this area. It's quite interesting, really,
And do you want to pan out and then look at the three? Just pan out, and I was going to point out three main points that I'm interested in. One is, of course, Adventure Bay, which is where Hobart Town is.
Oh yes.
Right. All right. So you got it. That's a
Bay.
Yeah.
Is Brunny Island.
Yeah.
So we've got Brunny Island, and we have Adventure Bay, which is, it's not showing where it is.
Okay, that's all right. It's around. It's the whole thing's pretty okay.
Oh, there he is, Adventure Bay.
All right, and that's been marked on the maps for many centuries. But if you pan out and point to Hobart, right, and you say, "Where's Hobart?" you can find quite easily.
Yes, there he is.
Right, that Hobart is nestled into almost a hiding place. So Hobart Town originally would have been well concealed.
Definitely.
And you wouldn't have, if you were in a 17th century ship, you wouldn't just go sail in there in fear that you won't be able to sail back out that easily. And you had natives with spears and all that sort of stuff. So you would have been quite difficult going in there.
Yes.
So, and there's two other locations. One is Launceston. Yeah. So Launceston is also on the end of a river, tucked away right far away from everyone else.
Yeah.
And its high streets have got the same colonial big blocks with the coin corners, and they look extremely rustic to the point that they don't look Federation at all. So that's and it's also hidden away all the way through multiple rivers, a river system that's going to be hard to navigate if you were. And the last thing people need to know, there's many things people need to know, but if you go to the west and to the big lake, Macquarie Lake, there's an ancient ruins, not ancient ruins, sorry, early ruins, colonial ruins.
Macquarie,
further down, it's down.
Down.
Yeah, Sarah Island Historical Site.
Oh yes, yep.
So that's also concealed. A lot of these early townships was most likely from the 17th, 18th century to 100 to 200 years before the British. were so well concealed that if you were in a tall ship and you were trying to even settle the place, it would take you months before you'd find these places. Just to get through, just to get familiar with the land, will take you a long time to find these old places. So they were well guarded in secrecy.
Oh, definitely.
And
And
there's mining all through Tasmania. So
yeah, funny about that. How we were talking about Sir Francis Drake, how he come back with all the gold and stuff from the Spanish.
mm,
They were privateers. So, yes, piracy, well, they lead you to believe that's where they got all their gold from, was piracy. I have a suspicion that they're over here mining. And yeah, we'll go into their keys of the treasure and stuff a bit later on.
mm.
So yeah, it's a bit interesting. Another one I was reading was Jericho was meant to be the oldest town here.
So Jericho is the oldest town in the oldest city in the world, apparently. And you're saying that Jericho is the oldest village or town in Tasmania?
Yes, apparently. Um, yeah, I found that quite interesting. Where's it's around here somewhere near Colebrook. That's you see, like we've got Mangalore, Baghdad. It just some of the names are.
What's the significance of
Oh
Mangalore?
yeah.
Oh, here, Jericho. Okay.
So yeah, apparently, and you can see how far it is into the land.
Yeah.
That this was one of the oldest towns. So
Why so far inland? It makes no sense.
yeah.
And where's the farmland? Okay, so if you want to go back into there, I found something really bizarre in there. Do you want to go back in? There was like Stonehenge. What's that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, I think I've shown you some of the pictures of the the circle of stones on the sides of the rivers and things. They're actually they're quite bizarre. I'll take some photos and put it into one of the presentations, and we'll just have a look at some of the, say, maybe symbology,
yes.
because these guys that name the place, they're into, they've got their secret societies or whatever you would like to call them. The Freemasons and people, royal, any royal society.
Okay,
Yep.
so Royal Societies and Templars. You got a couple of slides to finish off on this
Yes.
intro thing?
So we'll just look at the Templars and the Masons, and you can see that their first crusade was back in 1099 AD, and they joined forces or whatever to protect the people that would come over to Jerusalem to do their pilgrimage.
Which was a protection racket. How do you get 9 knights protecting hundreds of people? All they did is probably a protection racket and paid off the local crime gangs and said, okay, well,
Yeah.
if they're not with us, they're not protected. So it's a protection racket.
Yes, I think so. But anyways, it says that in the 1300s, they become a target for the cash-strapped French king. Now, so just say that maybe in the 1300s, these guys were out. I mean, we have they are with the House of Solomon, and we have, Solomon Islands not far from us, and then we have Tasmania that has, Jerusalem and, King Solomon's throne and his son David, King David. Oh, sorry, King David was the father of Solomon. Excuse me. It was just it gets a bit weird after a while. Amusing that they must think themselves a bit witty.
Now, no, but there's a recent slide you showed me on Facebook, right?
Yes.
That had you decoding the sonnet. Did you want to show that?
Decoding which one?
The sonnet.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. So this is one of Shakespeare's sonnets, and it basically.
Whoever hath her wish, thou hast thy will, and will to boot, and will in overplus, more than enough, and I that vex thee still, to thy sweet will making additional plus. Okay, so going through this, have you had a slide of your interpretation?
Yes, it's down here.
Brilliant. So whoever hath her will, thou hast thy wish.
There's a place called Wishing Well.
Yeah.
So I went to that. And from Wishing Well, just across, if you hold the little thing at just the right angle, it'll come up every now and then, is a place called St. Crispin's Well. Now, St. Crispin and his brother were Christian martyrs, but they're also the patron saint of shoemaking.
Right, and Crispin's Well is in Tasmania, right?
Yes, and also Shakespeare had done a speech on St. Crispin. I also have, sorry. Yeah, so he done a speech as part of his Henry V,
Yeah.
and that there has become now, if I've got the right one, a feast day, right? And it venerates their martyrdom. But now, since then, it's become to honour William Shakespeare.
So because William Shakespeare is a conglomerate, right?
Yes.
So it's not just Edward de Vere who did the sonnets, most likely.
No, and I don't think it was just Francis Bacon either.
No, it's Amelia Balsamo, Mark Balsamo, I think. What would have been the female, as the Moorish woman.
Yeah, and some of them are saying, even Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth one.
They're all in on it to put their mark on an eternal piece of literature and genius.
Yeah.
So you've got Crispin could have been part of when did he live?
Sorry, who?
When did Saint Crispin live?
Hang on. I'm not too sure. You have to edit this.
So go back to the previous slide that we did, the one that interprets, the one with the translation.
Yes, we can go back.
We got so much. Just in one slide, there's going to be so much to talk about. More than enough am I that vex thee still. So Mount King will I am I. So there's a Mount King William the First. Is that right?
Yes.
So what you interpret is that more than enough. This you should be doing like with Alexander Wall, like more than enough am I. So I is one. More than enough
I was interpreting
am I that vex thee still. So Mount King William I to thy sweet will making addition thus, Beehive Peak. How did you get that?
Because it's right next to the King William Range.
And it's got
And
sweet
if you're
will.
walking up from Wishing Well and what's his name? What was the other one? St. Crispin's Well. You will get to Beehive Peak before you get to Mount King William's Range or the King's William's Range. So, you know.
And it's like a treasure map. Wilt thou whose will? It's not just a treasure map because the gold mines are all over the place, including Victoria.
Yeah.
Wilt thou whose will is large and spacious, so William Plains,
yes.
not once vouchsafe to hide my will in thine, and thou shalt will in others seem right gracious, and in my will no fair acceptance shine.
Well, that one. See, because on his Stratford memorial, if I just go to that slide quickly, if I can find it. Oh, sorry, guys. I haven't got all my eggs in one basket. Oh, I cannot find it now. Oh, there it is. The Stratford Memorial, it says that Olympus possesses him. Okay, if you go through all of that, do you want to read it out at all?
Okay, so this is the classic burial stone. What is this? The epitaph?
Monument plaque for in Stratford.
Okay, I Indicio, Pilium, Genio, Socratem, Artem, Moronem, Terra, Tegi, Populus, Morae, Olympus. Okay, the first line translates as a Pilion in judgment, a Socrates in genius, a Maro in art, comparing Shakespeare to Nestor, the wise king of Pylos, to the Greek philosopher Socrates, and to the Roman poet Virgil, whose last name or cognomen was Maro. The second reads, the earth buries him, the people mourn him, Olympus possesses him, referring to Mount Olympus, the home of the Greek gods. And you're saying?
I'm saying that Socrates is Gad's Hill. Now, Gad's Hill...
and Gad's Hill in Tasmania.
He was known as the Gadfly. So, the hill is located near Meander and Homer, the Meander Swan, because they're all poets, so they'll have swan names or,
So Homer was a Meander Swan, right?
Yes.
Homer was also
Meander is right near Gad's Hill, and Homer was acknowledged by Socrates for his work. So there's that little... And Gad's Hill was mentioned in Shakespeare's play and also in the Bible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then because they're going on, comparing him to Nestor, the wise king of Pylos. Well, we have Eurydice Falls, which was King Nestor's wife. Or there's Mount Pelion East and West, which are either side of, Mount Olympus. So that, and the Pelions is named after a mountain, Pylos, where King Nestor lived.
Right.
So there's the Nestor connection.
Yeah.
And then we have Maro. Well, he was a poet. The Virgil connection is Dante in the Divine Comedy, because his friend Virgil was a ghost. And it's a bit weird, but yes, he had wrote about Virgil. So we have Dante Rivulet, Or there's Petrarch, which he wrote Ambrosian Virgil manuscript. So that's just right next to Mount Olympus.
And so all these amazing sites are in Tasmania. Well, this is
Yeah.
a really great start because, oh, wow. Hang on a sec, just stop for a sec. Okay, so here we go. These are the sites in Tasmania. So you've got Mount Olympus, Gads Hill, Mount Pelion East, Mount Pelion West, Lake Petrarch, and Dante Rivulet.
Yes, and I do have a photo of Eurydice Falls, but I've kept that for another one that I've decoded.
Well, that's going to be another thing because we're going to keep doing these non-stop because what you've done, this is what you've done, is that you've started like the what I've been researching is just a bit more of like I've not done enough research in the past couple month or so. But what you've done is you've connected up the mythology that people are hiding something from people, and they give them Oak Island that keeps them occupied for like 200 years of going nowhere, without realizing that there's a whole enlightenment thing, but it seems to be embodied in an old Eden that is and Tasmania is almost Antipodean. It's on the other side of the world to England. It's not exactly the opposite side of the world. It's not far off.
Yeah, not far.
Not far, and it would have been idyllic. And that also includes because I did videos on Norumbega being Tasmania, I mean being Victoria, and
Yes.
Victoria would have had like a lot of swampland, a lot of rough country, but in some parts would have been uh, idyllic. So and had gold, of course, in Ballarat. So and we see all these connections in the folklore alluding to something, and then of course the maps prove that they were trying to hide it by creating such false maps that, and we could look at that. Some of the maps aren't completely false, but that so you could probably reverse engineer, maybe offset it by 30 degrees or some other weird thing, and you could probably figure it out. But
Yep.
they kind of the map is intentionally distorted almost by a certain code or a certain design. That's really interesting what you showed about Tasmania and that last thing. So I was going, yeah, that's brilliant. And you could have probably divided the whole thing by in terms of degrees of longitude by a
Oh,
factor of
yeah. I have.
60 or something, or 33, the magic number 33. You should try that and see
Yeah.
if you shrink it down, do you divide it by 30 or some number? Do you get does the map actually demonstrate things that if you actually rebuilt the maps using a coded sequence, whether you're going to get the actual map? And
Oh, yeah. Well, I had done some you know work on that sort of thing, like just the major ones that they keep talking about. So I've pinpointed them and measured the distance to each, and I'll show you an example.
all right, so what have we got here? Kings, okay. Geo-cosmology, yep.
Yeah, so I've just picked these places by random because the names keep popping up in different things. So they say three's confirmation is more more times I read
and
it.
this is brilliant. I mean, this is great work. This is terrific work.
Yeah, and we'll get into a bit more about the threes and fours. And show you about the Clavis and the source, the source, blah, blah, you can cut that.
Because the thing is that they say Tasmania was a floating island back in the so-called, because we don't know exactly about geology too much.
No, I was watching a interesting little thing on YouTube about the guy that started doing geology, because previously it was known or thought of, because it said in the Bible that granite was God's rock. So that I thought that was a bit interesting because that could sort of get into the geopolymers. I mean, what do we have today? We have heaps of it. Every time we get a new stone top for our kitchen counters, it's geopolymer.
Okay.
So, I thought that was a bit interesting. And he went on and explained away how things worked and stuff like that, but it didn't really give me any scientific work that he done. He just was explaining things by how he seen it. So I thought that was interesting. That's what our understanding is from that one man. And yeah, because sometimes we just don't see these things occur in nature.
Okay. All right. No, you don't. Okay, so no, this is like this is, and is this an exact triangle? These 3 points?
Yes, 30 kilometers to each. Now, I'm only doing it from point to point. You know, I can't say exactly, only what the map is telling me. But by coincidence, maybe, that when I measured it, they were all 30 kilometers each. And yeah, you add it all up and it turns into 4, which is
But this is
quite
kilometers.
great.
The thing is that okay, well, it has to be done in miles. But
Oh,
yeah,
well, that's what Google Earth showed me. So that
yeah,
was what it was telling me.
no, yeah. But from if you're doing numbers, we have to sort of convert it to imperial miles or British miles. That might be the way to do it. It'd be interesting because if we do. Okay, so it's 18.6 miles each. It's interesting, like because we get often this, we say it has to be in miles, it didn't have kilometres then. Well, you don't know what they had back then because where do we get anything? We get kilometres now
They
from
could have
when?
been doing it in cubits because there's a cubic creek there.
Well, but the thing is that they would have figured out like if they had foreknowledge of the future because they knew the script, right? Because if it's
Because
written
they're
with
writing the script,
so
yeah.
they're writing the script. So kilometers could have been invented 300, 500 years ago. That could have been kilometers could have been around forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, it could have been like, okay, well, it's 18
Well,
something
it doesn't matter if it's kilometers. It's the same distance.
each way. It's right. It's a
Yeah.
triangle.
It doesn't matter what you measure it in. It is a triangle, and the area of that triangle is going to be such and such because the area, because of the it's a Pythagoras thing, and you know how they had the cult of Pythagoras and
That's
things
right.
like that.
This is an equal angled triangle. Like everything's the same distance.
Yeah.
So that's 60 by 60 degrees essentially.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
mean,
pretty accurate. I mean, that's amazing. Anyway, what we might do is leave it there.
yeah.
That's excellent presentation. I'm looking forward to the next one. So say that again, you got lots to share.
Yes, and lots to uncover still.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it's a good journey to go down the rabbit hole.
I think this is a great piece of work. We keep doing it and we keep adding to the
Yeah.
repertoire. Okay, cool.